Well, welcome back to the Weathershed. I'm your weather interpreter, veteran storm chaser, and lifelong Iowan Clarence Smith. Tonight we're going to touch on the continued warmth we've experienced here in Iowa, but also touch base on what's going on down there in the Gulf of Mexico with Hurricane Milton. First off, if you've been watching the last few videos, you've probably noticed this map before. This is our temperature anomaly from the Euro model, and as you can probably assume, those orangey auburn fall-like colors represent above average temperatures in the blue below. And well, it's more of the same. Continued warmth here in the western two-thirds of the United States. It's really starting to get old. It's October 7th now, and we've been above average for weeks. And of course, the averages continue to fall as we go on, but we're still looking at anywhere from 5 to 10 degrees above normal. And you can see, first we'll peek down here, Gulf of Mexico into Florida. There's Hurricane Milton making its way. Bullseye centered right on Tampa Bay. Not a good scenario. Again, we'll cover more on that later in this video, but as I mentioned, we just have this ridge that's just stuck. It's not going anywhere. Nothing can dislodge it. And that's explaining our warm temperatures this early now into mid-fall. Looking ahead, tomorrow highs more of the same, upper 70s. These are typically about 10 degrees above normal for the state, depending on where you live. Maybe a little less up there in Decorah, Dubuque area, but more of the same. Gets even warmer there on Wednesday and Thursday, our hottest day of the week, topping out around 86 there in central Iowa. Not a lot of fun, to be honest. But we might have a little bit taste of at least seasonable weather here coming up on the weekend. Here overnight, lows Saturday into Sunday. We're going to get into almost the freezing mark, perhaps, up there in northeast Iowa. I would expect some frost, especially anywhere probably north of Highway 20. Seems reasonable, especially in low-lying areas. And then for Sunday during the day, highs expected to be pretty close to average. Mid-60s, lower 60s up there in the northeast around Decorah, but overall a nice little break from the heat here coming this weekend. Long term, doesn't look great. Our 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center going from the 15th to the 21st shows us above or even expected well above average temperatures and above or below average precipitation during that same time. So the hot, dry fall continues. I hate to say it, but it's kind of feeling like it's going to be one of those falls where we go from summer straight into winter. Hopefully that's not the case, and we have maybe a beautiful November. Who knows? So a long ways out to see and trust any models. But Climate Prediction Center is at least looking at above average temperatures for the Midwest through the entirety of October. But what can you do? It's not like it's snowing out, at least. That's a good thing. It's not highs in the 40s or something extreme where we just went straight into winter. Anyway, not much we can do. With that said, I know this channel is primarily focused here on weather in Iowa, but something exceptional happened in the last 24 hours. Hurricane Milton, down there off the Yucatan Peninsula, went from a tropical storm to a Category 5 hurricane in 24 hours. That is just nuts. I don't know if it's unprecedented. Hurricanes, tropical weather is not my forte. I'm not even being, as a storm chaser, terribly interested in hurricanes, but the fact that it strengthened that much in that short a time is exceptional. That much I can say. This image, satellite image composite of visual and infrared, was taken about an hour ago. Currently, we're setting at just after 8:30 p.m. Central Time, and it's got a relatively tight, small, defined eye wall, which is giving it some very strong winds. last measured at 180 miles per hour. And that is just crazy to think about, something that strong. And even though it looks kind of small here in the Gulf of Mexico, that is a good sized area to be impacted. Now, we'll show the projected path here in a moment, but from this image, it's going to look something like this here through the next few days, making, again, as I mentioned earlier, a beeline towards the Tampa Bay area. That's the current thinking, what the models are showing. And here it is, making landfall overnight Wednesday around 1 a.m. Thursday morning, right there in Tampa Bay, which is probably worst case scenario in terms of population and the effects of the storm surge. They're looking at an expected 10 to 15 foot storm surge. And to give you some perspective, if you think of my single story house, that is pretty much the entire height of the house at the max there. So terrible situation to happen, especially in a bay area at sea level. There's going to be some major flooding, and the hurricane is going to track straight through Florida. So it's not just the west coast, but the east coast of Florida that's going to feel the impacts later on. Not as bad, but definitely something to keep an eye on for the entire state. Now, one good thing to point out, our last hurricane, Helene, made a motion trajectory that was more like this, causing just terrible devastation with flash flooding in the Appalachian areas. Luckily, this hurricane seems to be tracking away from them and should have very little impact on the weather up there and rainfall and such. So if there's one bright piece, at least gives those in Appalachia some time to start to rebuild and recover, recoup, and just deal with the devastation that they've had. But as mentioned, storm surge is going to be the main story. It may not land as a Category 5. In fact, it's projected to probably land as a 3 or 4. But keep in mind, Katrina did the same thing and pushed a tremendous amount of water inland and just inundated where it made landfall. Even with the weakened status, that still also means about 110 mile per hour wind sustained in that region. So if you yourself happen to be watching this and you're down in Florida, or if you know someone that lives down there, as a lot of us do with folks that have retired and moved down here out of the Midwest, if they haven't left, please try and encourage them to do so here tomorrow, Tuesday. Wednesday is probably going to be too late. So at least make sure they're prepared. Again, I'm not one to be an expert or give advice on tropical situations, but this is a major storm, and that's why I wanted to talk about it and just the exceptional strength that it has had. And part of it is owing to the angle that it's going to hit Florida. It's going to be a perpendicular angle as opposed to more of like a glancing blow that we tend to see, especially here on the West Coast. So it's a bit unusual for that, and it's just going to really just push that surge, push that water inland. And that's why it's just being treated so strongly by government officials and the media. It is justified. It makes total sense. So, again, just want to touch base on it. No, this is a Iowa-focused channel, but this is the strongest hurricane we've seen since 2019, I believe. The pressure in the eye wall is very deep, very strong. It's approaching 900 millibars. It's just an incredible storm that has strengthened very quickly, faster than forecasted. So when I was at work today, my coworker said Category 5 to hurricane to hit Florida. I was like, you mean forecasted Category 5? And he said, no, it is currently a Category 5, and I just couldn't believe it. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel, because getting the weather a day late is pretty useless. So have a wonderful night. Thanks.